They said she was cursed long before she understood what the word even meant. Lila had grown up hearing whispers behind thin walls, voices lowered but sharp enough to cut. Her mother prayed over her, her father kept his distance, and neighbors stared with the kind of pity that was worse than hatred. When she turned 18, the truth they feared finally revealed itself: she couldn't have children. A doctor in a dusty clinic spoke the diagnosis with the detachment of someone commenting on the weather, unaware of how those few words would unravel her entire life. To her parents, who valued daughters based on the families they could marry into or the grandchildren they could bring, infertility turned Lila into a burden, something useless, something to hide. She remembered the day they sold her as if it had been carved into her bones. Her mother couldn't meet her gaze. Her father counted the money with a quiet concentration, each click of the coins sounding like a nail in a coffin. The man who bought her wasn't a monster, but he wasn't kind either. He saw her the way farmers see tools: necessary, replaceable, and without identity. He took her to a remote lumber settlement deep in the northern woods, where workers labored from dawn to dusk and sleep was the only escape from the cold. Her life there became a rhythm of exhaustion. She hauled water, chopped wood, scrubbed floors, and cooked for men who barely acknowledged her presence. No one asked her name; they called her girl, or you, or nothing at all. Her palms blistered, her knuckles cracked, and her voice grew quiet from lack of use. Every once in a while she wondered if her parents ever thought of her, whether they regretted what they'd done. But the thought always faded. Hope didn't survive long in a place like that. One late afternoon, while gathering firewood near the thick tree line, she heard panicked voices. Children. The sound startled her, because children rarely came near the work zone. Curious, and worried, she followed the cries until she found 4 siblings struggling in the snow. A heavy branch had fallen on a small boy's foot, pinning him down. His sisters tugged at it, tears streaming down their faces, while the older brother tried desperately to lift it. Without hesitating, Lila rushed forward. She planted her feet, gripped the branch with both hands, and used every ounce of strength she'd built from long days of labor. The branch rolled aside, and she tore strips from her shawl to wrap the boy's swollen ankle. The children stared at her with a mixture of awe and relief, clinging to her like she was someone who mattered. That was when she heard footsteps crunching through the snow and a deep voice calling out. She turned to see a large, broad-shouldered lumberjack hurrying toward them, worry etched into every line of his face. Jonah Wells reached the children breathless, his flannel sleeves dusted with sawdust and his beard catching flakes of snow. When he saw Lila crouched over his injured son, his expression shifted from panic to relief so quickly that it left her startled. He thanked her softly, his voice deep but warm, as though he wasn't used to speaking gently yet somehow managed it perfectly in that moment. Lila nodded without meeting his eyes, expecting him to take the children and hurry away like everyone else did when she appeared. But Jonah didn't. He kneeled beside her, checked his son's ankle, and asked her if she was hurt too. No one had asked her that in a very long time. The next morning, Jonah returned to where she lived and worked, standing outside the small cabin as though unsure how close he should step. He offered her a ride to the lumber site, but it didn't sound like a command, it sounded like an invitation. Lila hesitated, worried that someone would accuse her of stepping out of line, but Jonah made sure the overseer knew he had asked for her help with the children. It was the first time anyone had vouched for her. She followed him through the cold path, her breath forming small clouds in the air, and the children ran out to greet her as if they had known her for years. What began as occasional help turned into something more natural. Lila found herself teaching the younger ones to read using scraps of newspaper, stitching torn jackets with steady hands, and cooking meals that actually tasted like something other than smoke. The children trusted her immediately and followed her through the camp like she was a lantern in the dark. Jonah watched quietly, always from a respectful distance, noticing how their home began to change when Lila was near. The silence of his cabin softened with laughter again. The children slept more easily. Even he felt the heaviness in his chest begin to lift whenever she walked inside. One evening, after the kids had fallen asleep in a warm jumble of blankets, Jonah stepped out onto the porch where Lila sat staring at the icy sky. He sat a few inches away from her, close enough to share the cold but not close enough to make her uneasy. He spoke slowly, choosing his words with care, telling her that she didn't deserve the life she had been forced into, that she deserved a place where she was treated as someone valuable. She tried to argue, saying people didn't want someone who came with the kind of flaws she carried. Jonah looked at her then, truly looked at her, and said her infertility didn't change a single thing about the person she was. It didn't erase her kindness, her strength, or the way his children adored her. His voice trembled when he admitted that he cared for her too, not because she could give him more children, but because she had brought warmth back into a home that had nearly frozen without her. Tears slid down her cheeks before she could stop them, and Jonah didn't wipe them away or pull her close. He just waited, letting her feel safe enough to breathe. In that quiet, snowy night, something in her finally broke free. She realized she didn't want to leave. She wanted this messy, imperfect, healing family. And Jonah, without pushing or pleading, simply opened the door to it. By the end of winter, Lila was no longer a silent worker hiding in the shadows. She belonged to a home built on acceptance, to children who called her family, and to a man who saw her not as broken, but as the missing piece of the life he'd been trying to hold together.